Hey, what's up guys, Tony here, and you're watching some more iRacing. This is the V8 Supercar Strength of Field race on Fridays. This is the second split. I qualified third with a 209.4, and this race is pretty close. I'm only really going to show the first half of the race because once, you know, anytime in the V8 Supercar or any other race where you have to pit, really after the pit stop, very rarely does it get exciting. I think the last couple laps I'll include just because it gets a little close because the guy who was behind me started closing the gap. And a lot of that was my fault. I started making a lot of really stupid mistakes, and so I let him get closer. Anyways, in this video what I do want to talk about is my wheel. I have been thinking about doing a sort of a review of the ClubSport V2 base and rim and the desk stand, because I know there's a lot of people that hard mount this wheel, and I do not have it hard mounted, so I kind of feel like I'm unique. I'm a beautiful little snowflake. So anyways, what I'm also going to do is, earlier today I strapped the GoPro to my head and I took some footage of me driving around Road America here with the G27 and with the ClubSport V2 wheel. And so what I want to do is I want to kind of compare and contrast those in a subsequent video, just to show you, I guess, the differences and talk about the differences and the likes and dislikes between both wheels, because now I've actually owned 3 wheels in sort of my iRacing career in the last 3.5 years or so. So the first wheel I had was a Driving Force GT, and that was a pretty simple wheel. And so the only thing I could do is sort of liken the experience of going from the Driving Force GT with its very, very weak force feedback to the G27. Because when I went from the Driving Force GT to the G27, I had to sort of relearn how to drive, because the force feedback on the G27 was significantly stronger than Driving Force GT. And it just felt like an actual, not like a toy, because the Driving Force GT was very toy-like, very small, very light. It just, I don't know, it had the shifter right there next to the wheel, and very plastic, and not like a real, like, authentic racing wheel. So going from the G27 to the ClubSport base and rim, big improvement. I mean, there's really nothing else I can say about it, because and I'll talk about this probably more in the comparison video, but the force feedback, although it's stronger with the ClubSport wheel, what I'm loving about the ClubSport wheel right now is that everything's a little bit more nuanced. There are things that I can feel with a belt-driven wheel, with a wheel, say, this caliber, that I couldn't feel with the G27. The G27, I did a lot of how do I put it, like wiggling, wheel wiggles. You know, like, you just kind of feel like you have to kind of wiggle the wheel. And I always felt that once the car got unsettled and sideways, with the G27, it was gone. Like, I had to, when I was running with the G27, I felt like I always had to be very precise in my movements. And I think that led to me just being kind of a slower driver. I have noticed that my times have gotten a lot better with this wheel. I don't want to say like my expectation was I'd buy an expensive wheel and I would become a really good driver, because that is not the case. But I do think that to a certain extent, equipment brings out the potential in a driver. So a good comparison would be like when I went from my G27 pedals to the ClubSport V2 pedals. Like, it was night and day difference. Like, I noticed my lap times were down pretty significantly because I could brake deeper and harder with the load cell brakes by compared to the potentiometer brakes. And so I also felt that because they were tighter, you got a little bit more, again, nuance within the pedal. Like, you can feather it a little bit nicer, you can feather the brakes a little nicer. So making the jump from the ClubSport, or excuse me, from the Logitech pedals to the Fanatec pedals was a pretty big jump. And so anything I read online was like, oh yeah, pedals are more important than the wheel itself. So I got the pedals first. Plus it was cheaper. But now that I've got the wheel, I'm looking at, I have the entire Fanatec setup. So we've got the ClubSport V3 pedals now, which I upgraded to last year from the V2s, and I have the V2 base and rim. And so looking at this setup now by comparison to the G27 and to the modified version of G27 I had with the Fanatec pedals and the G27 rim or wheel, it's pretty night and day. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I feel like my driving has gotten a lot smoother. I feel way more the road. I feel like when I kind of get out of shape, I can, very quickly correct it without overcorrecting. I think that's obviously not going to go away entirely. I know what's going to happen is, you'll always take the car to the limit. I honestly have to say that once I've gotten myself sort of used to this wheel, I have gotten better. I have to admit, I think that's a part of it. So this going back to my analogy about, equipment doesn't make you a better driver, but equipment is like good equipment allows your skills, I think, to be better represented. Like I know that I'm definitely like a mid-pack kind of driver, unless I get into, like a second split like this race where my time is closer towards the front of the pack, then great. I'm just happen to be in this tier of drivers. I just happen to be better than the rest of the field. But looking at first split, I'm slow and not even close to mid-pack. So I definitely have room for improvement. But I just think, like I said, I think this is helping to bring out, sort of my potential. And it's along the same ways as like when you have like a really good setup. Like in the V8 Supercar, setup is pretty big. Like I've run some setups where they're just trash, and then I've been given a setup from someone who knows how to build a setup, and it's like, oh my god, like I just picked up a couple of seconds per lap that I couldn't do with my setup, and like this setup is amazing, It's along the same lines. It's like a good setup will help sort of like an average driver be better. Obviously with the top tier sort of alien, it just makes them, an alien. But I think like good hardware and a good setup make for the ability to be a good racer. Of course, there's everything that goes into beyond that. But so, anyways, I really don't have anything negative to say about this particular setup. The desk mount is very hardy. It's very heavy, and what I do enjoy is the angle at which the wheel sits. Because I saw that you can either mount it flat or you have this I don't know, it's like a 30-degree incline, and I really enjoyed that. Like sitting here at my desk when I was driving with the G27 today, I felt so tall because the wheel was kind of facing sort of parallel with my body and down, whereas the Fanatec wheel was up on this little perch here. It's got an incline to it. It just feels more natural, and everything just feels better. I like, I like the clicks. I like the way the wheel feels. The rim I have, I didn't mention this before, but I mean, if you follow me on Twitter or if you've heard me talk about it before, the rim I have is the F1 rim. It's the non-carbon fiber rim because I went on the cheap. I knew I wanted the base. The base was really expensive. The desk mount was pretty expensive. The desk mount, I think, was like $50. The F1 rim was like $149 of all the wheels, like of all the rims. That was the cheapest one. So to keep costs down, I was like, I'm gonna get that one. I actually thought initially that the shifters were by your index finger, at the top like an F1 wheel. But I'm glad that they're paddle shifters that are down towards your middle ring finger. The other thing that I found out recently is I think it's called Fana LEDs or Fana LEDs or whatever. But so Fana LEDs, as I'm calling it. If it's pronounced differently, please let me know. But that has also sort of upped the game for me to not only an immersion, or not only for immersion, but for like driving references, because the way it's set up now is that the rumble is kind of always running, simulates an engine, and you kind of get that sort of vibration in the wheel itself and the pedals. It's not very strong in the pedals as far as like when you're on the throttle, when you're on brake, and when you're shifting. But again, it adds to the immersion. Everything I've read online is basically like, hey, you know what? They're very, very weak. you'll want to get yourself like a butt kicker or something like that, and that'd be great. The problem is that I live in an apartment complex, and so I don't think my downstairs neighbor wants to hear a butt kicker going off at like 11 o'clock at night as I'm, trying to quietly race around whatever track I'm racing at. So for me, I really kind of appreciate the input it gives me, because it gives me an idea that I'm doing something wrong. Because even when I was running without the vibrations going on, without the Fanatec running, there were times where I just didn't know. Like, the force feedback was great. I felt like there were things that I was improving upon with a much more stable wheel. Just feeling like my driving was becoming a little bit more fluid. I think the force feedback also helps that you from like oversteering into a corner, because you immediately feel the force back. You're like, oh yeah, I'm pushing kind of hard on this, I can kind of back it out. And so for me, it's been an education, to put it, I can't really put it any other way. It's been an education, sort of relearn how to drive a car with this setup. But like I said, with the Fanatec running, with the vibration, you can feel more of like the braking, how it's affecting the wheel. There have been a couple times where I'm locking up, and I've been able to, I think it happened in this race and it happened in Wednesday night's race, where I was able to kind of correct it. I'm like, oh yeah, let's fix that. So anyways, what I would have loved to, the other wheel I was looking at, so this is going to be kind of tangential but sort of at the same time relevant to what I was about to say, is that the other wheel I was looking at was I believe it was a TX, Thrustmaster TX wheel, or TXTG wheel. It's belt-driven wheel. I think for the whole shebang it was about $500 or $4 something on Amazon. And I was really looking at that wheel, and I just didn't pick it up because, well, honestly, I just kind of thought, when I looked at some of the videos of it, watching Inside of Sim Racing, and some other people have done reviews of it, I just wasn't really impressed. I kind of thought it looked kind of plasticky and little toy-like. And so I was already super happy with the ClubSport V2 and V3 pedals that I've owned. So I figured, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to do this. I'd love to, get something like this. Of course, at the same time, I went and I started looking up direct drive wheels like the AccuForce, and that one's going for like $1,800 just to start without the bells and whistles. And while I hear it's a fantastic wheel, I just don't think I'm into that. Maybe later, I don't know. But anyways, I was heavily considering the Thrustmaster wheel, and I just ended up opting for Fanatec just because I'm already sort of invested in a Fanatec rig. So I really honestly can't say anything bad at the moment. I've heard bad things about the wheel. I've heard people say that they've had their wheel break down on them, and I'm sure that's the case. We'll see if I have to be victimized by that. I had some experiences with firmware that wasn't updated properly, and I emailed Fanatec about it, and they got back to me right away. So the one thing I've always heard, and of course reading online, the people that are complaining are constantly saying that the very negative things about Fanatec's customer service, but the 2 or 3 times that I've emailed them about a concern, they've gotten right back to me within a day. So from my experience, their customer service is pretty top notch. The pedal issue that I was having, which I eventually found out was a firmware update. There was also an issue with sort of the greasers in the brake pedal, like because it was sticking. And so he was going to say, he told me, he's like, hey, if you want these, they're basically like little grease kind of pads you stick in there. I think, I'd have to go back and look at the email. But basically he was going to send me new grease in these new little pads, because that's the issue that I was having. And then come to find out, it was just a firmware update. So they were going to go ahead and send me out sort of a fix for free, which was great. And I imagine that, heaven forbid, something happens to this wheel, my expectation is that Fanatec's customer service will be on par with what I've experienced so far. So that's another reason why I kind of went into it. I was just like, okay, well, they've got a good reputation. I've had a good experience with them so far, so I don't think there's going to be anything that I'm going to be too concerned about. It's like I said, at the moment, everything feels great. It's one of those things that I kind of wish I would have done a little while ago. But I really didn't have the means to do that. So I guess it was just a pipe dream looking at the V2 wheel going, oh my god, this is amazing, I really want this. The only thing I am concerned about, I'll be honest with you, is that if I'm running the rumble all the time when I'm racing, that sooner or later it's just going to go. So that's kind of my concern. I don't know what the longevity is as far as the rumbles go on the pedals and on the wheel itself. But like I said, it really is immersive. I think honestly, if I got VR like an Oculus Rift when it comes down in price and when more games are utilizing it, or perhaps one of the other VRs are running, say, better than, because I have heard some negative things about Oculus as far as image quality is concerned. But if I ever get to the point where I'm not running triple monitors anymore, where I'm running like VR, I think honestly that would just this whole setup would be amazing. Obviously you can improve upon it, but so far what I'm feeling, it's pretty amazing. So in a nutshell, I'm pretty much still in the honeymoon phase. Like I said, I feel like my driving has improved. I feel like everything's just a little bit smoother. I think that the force feedback is it's nice because it's strong, but in iRacing obviously you can dial it back, and I've sort of been custom tuning cars as I go. So it's nice that those settings are saved within iRacing, so I don't have to keep changing, like, what was it for GT3 again? Did I run 8 or 10 or 12? You know, what do I do for the V8 supercar? Do I run 5 or 6? So having that flexibility in the wheel. While I'm staring at the wheel itself, I'm loving the button layout. I really do. Like I said, I love the shifters. I do love how loud they are. I know some people hate that, but I don't know. I love it. The button placement, I like it. The only issue that I have is there are 3 buttons in sort of a triangle formation that you just can't easily get to without taking your hand off the wheel. Otherwise, you've got 6, 8 buttons plus the D-pad, and then it's kind of like a control stick. Although that doesn't really do anything in iRacing that I've found so far, besides the actual button, the plunger. So, of those buttons, those are fantastic. They actually work. But the buttons below that, those 3, I don't have them programmed because I just don't know what do I need to reach down here that I can't get at my thumbs. It's kind of awkwardly placed for me. But I really do love the F1 rim. For me, it's perfect size. And the other thing I was going to mention is that I like the fact that, it's a quick release system. That way you can put on different rims. And my main gripe about the G27 was it didn't really matter what car you were driving. You had the same steering wheel. So if you're riding in a McLaren or an F1 car or a BMW, G27. So if I want, for immersion's sake, if I want to change, if I'm driving a BMW, if I want to change to the BMW rim, then I can do that. If I want to change to the Porsche wheel rim, I can do that. I gotta buy it, but I have that option of having different rims to give me a different experience. And I've seen some of the universal patterns and like being able to attach buttons to different wheels, like real racing wheels that have real quick releases. So I'm loving that aspect of it. I love to be able to customize and sort of make it my own. So that's another factor I like. Now I'm thinking about it, the other thing I really enjoy about this is when you start it up, it doesn't make this god-awful, like, loud clanking. And here it is spinning right now. You can probably hear it. Just spins around. It's quiet. Like the G27 is like clang, clang. It's pretty loud. And so turning that on, again, living in sort of an apartment situation, I really don't want my neighbors to hear it all the time. The other thing is that when I do crash, I really haven't had any sort of gnarly experiences where it's made too much noise. The G27 would make that like clunking noise. And so anyways, I'll save the comparison stuff for later on, even though I have touched a little bit on it. But I'll do it again maybe in a week or so, or a couple days. I don't know, whenever I decide to put that video together. But so far, the ClubSport, V2 base and the F1 rim, I'm absolutely loving these. So if you can afford it, definitely go that route. The wheel that I would like to have tried, like I said, is the TX wheel from Thrustmaster. That was the other one that I was really looking into. So maybe if Richard Tam, who goes by Rancer Racer online on YouTube, if he goes out and he picks up the TX wheel, I'd really love to get him in here and do sort of like a comparison sort of commentary with him about his experiences with the wheel, because I think right now he's using a G27. So if he upgrades to the TX wheel, then I think that'd be a nice point of comparison, and just kind of talk to him about what he feels he likes and dislikes about this new wheel that he's got. So anyways, before I go on too long, that's pretty much it. You know, like I said, it's an expensive wheel. If you have the means to pick it up, it'll definitely be a great upgrade to like a G27 or like a whatever, you know, G920, G29, that level, sort of a quote-unquote entry-level wheel for sim racing. It is obviously on the high side at $600 for the base, plus another at least $150 for the wheel, or for the rim. So kind of expect to pay close to $1,000 for this, not including pedals. So you're well in over $1,000 if you're going that complete route. But it definitely is a night and day difference for sure. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. And if you have answers for some of the things that I don't really know, please let me know in the comment section below. So as always, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I shall talk to you guys later.